Welcome back, mentors, for episode 2 officially of the Unintentional Mentor Podcast. Thank you for returning. If it's your first time here, welcome. Your unintentional mentor of this week is an amazing human being named Melissa Feuchtinger. I have gotten the opportunity to work with her, to chat with her, to meet her initially at a Comic-Con, and I'm excited for this very long, very awesome conversation. We cover everything. I am just going to be straight with you. We go over everything. This is a great episode if you have somebody in their teens who is looking to figure out what their future might be, somebody in their 20s who is trying to figure out how to navigate life and relationships. We literally, I am so excited for you to enjoy this week's Unintentional Mentor. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm a lot better now. So one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you as an unintentional mentor is I have watched you blossom from somebody who wanted to get into the film industry to through your AD course and your growth on that to working in television. And as somebody who has made a film and a couple shorts, like you are literally someone I look up to as far as like what your progress is and how to perform as a decent human being in the industry. So without going into your accolades and all of your bio and your history, what inspired you or what mentors did you have that got you into doing work in the film industry?
So I guess to open, I should kind of explain what an assistant director does, because not a lot of people understand my job very well. I'm not an assistant to the director in the sense of like, I don't get the director coffee. I mean, I can, but I don't, that's not my job. I don't schedule his, personal day-to-day nonsense. I am an assistant director, which means that I am part of the director's team. I kind of do the technical aspect of the creative job of directing. So I take a script and I break it down, or my team breaks it down, I should say. I'm a second AD. The first AD is typically the person that, breaks down the script into elements, scenes, then schedules that script. And we take care of making sure everything the director wants while also fitting into the parameters of what the producers need and what the budget is there on set for us to film. And so we also manage the day-to-day scheduling of keeping the day moving, not shooting past a certain number of hours, fitting within the budgetary elements of how many extras we can have, when to bring elements in, as helpful as it is to have your 100 extras at the first minute of the day. If they don't work until the last scene, don't bring them in. That's a huge waste of money. You bring them in later. And so, I deal with that with timing of equipment, timing of the actors, timing of the hair, makeup, and wardrobe individuals, and the extras, things like that. So we're very much there to help make sure that, everything's there. But at the end of the day, especially in television where you have rotating directors, my boss are the producers. So they're the people that employ me. So all of that being said, as an assistant director, I have looked up to other assistant directors that I learned from. When I was still going to NYU, I did an internship on a Nickelodeon show, and they kind of filtered us through different departments, and they had us work per week because it was a multicam show and we did live shows. So each episode takes 1 week to produce, in the sense of the first 3 days we're doing rehearsals and table reads and walkthroughs with camera, but we don't film until in that schedule, the Thursday and Friday. So they would send us each week to a different department, and you're helping this person, you're helping that person. And once every few weeks, I would get to be on stage with the assistant directors. And they're all very inspiring people, but one of the ADs, his name was Joe Stafford, he had done the DGA training program, and he was just a very good combination of thorough and funny. Like, you didn't have to worry about the job being done but he will definitely say some shit back to you if you annoy him, and he will definitely argue, and he will definitely like shut the door to the office and talk about how so-and-so is an idiot. And I respect that because I have that same like dry sense of humor, but my work ethic is very strong also. So at the end of the day, like I know the job still needs to get done. And when I was going to NYU the semester before that summer, I had done a producing class, and they mentioned, line producers come from production managers, and the production manager job is a DGA job. And usually get to that position from being an assistant director. And there's this assistant director's training program. It's a huge walk. But when I mentioned to Joe, like, hey, I heard of this program, what do you think? He had done the program, and he said, I think you have the right mentality for it. You should apply. And so I, applied and got in, where I then worked with other assistant directors that I also thought are really great people. I think it just comes from a experience standpoint, but it also is a personality standpoint. It's not an easy job by any means. It's not a difficult job in the sense of, you break down a script and you schedule it, but usually the schedule comes from elements that you kind of just work between. As someone who likes playing Tetris, it's literally just like, will this block fit? Can we shoot this scene on Tuesday? No, because this actor isn't available Tuesday. Okay, push that scene to the other side of the board. Can we shoot this scene on Tuesday? We only have the location Tuesday. Yes, it has to fall on Tuesday. And so you're just kind of moving the blocks all around, dropping them in, and there's your schedule. And then once you get into the nuance of the production, if it's a film or, a TV show, some actors don't want to wake up early in the morning. They're kind of grumpy in the morning. You put their scenes later in the day. How long does it take to do the prosthetic makeup piece for the one scene? Maybe don't do it first thing up, because all those people now have to come to work at 4 a.m. to put it on so that we're ready to shoot at 7. Maybe do it a little later in the day and give everyone a break. What can we do? What makes sense? So I don't even know how I got to this part of the conversation, but oh yeah,
No,
it's not a difficult job by any means, but there are a lot of people who just don't have a personality that's really fun to work with or be around for the 14 hours that we're all at work every day. And so I typically gravitate towards the people who have strong work ethics, but also can joke around at the fact that sometimes our day is like, oh, well, now we're waiting for this actor to show up because they're always late. And, oh, so-and-so is not coming to set because she didn't get a Chick-fil-A sandwich. That happened to me one day, and it was on my birthday, and it was an awful day. But you have to laugh. I can laugh at that in retrospect, but in that day it was very stressful. So I usually follow people and find those people to be mentors because they've done it for long enough that this hasn't completely destroyed them in a job that can completely destroy you. And so I usually follow the people that like to laugh. And those are people that I will work for again, because I need to laugh or else I'll cry.
Well, look, as somebody who has worked with you and hopes to work with you again in the future, you are the gold standard of any AD that I will ever work with again. You are literally the bar. It is really damn high because of you. Because you're a lot the same. I'm the same way. I will close the door. I will talk shit. I will gladly have a dry sense of humor about things. But I like to work, and I like to keep organized, and I like to keep people that there's times to play in between all the structure. But and this is entirely up to you about how much you want to divulge. You have the most interesting perspective of the film and television industry and the entertainment industry as a whole than anybody I ever know. And I know that you have tons of mentors or people that you've looked up to outside of the film industry. So what are some of those people, whether they are friends, family, business cohorts, whatever, that have given you some great advice that you have just carried with you for the rest of your life?
Oh God. I definitely looked up to my grandmother, who passed away it's like 4.5 years ago. She grew up in Boston, moved to New York, my grandmother on my mother's side. And she was someone who worked like well into her 70s. She lived in New York. My grandfather didn't make a lot of money, so she had to like pick up a lot of the slack. They moved out here when my brother was born because we were basically the only family they had left. And she was someone who told me, and this is probably going to sound not great, but she said money matters. Not because she wanted me to have a Scrooge McDuck like swimming in a bathtub full of gold situation, but because she knew that when you have money, you can breathe and it makes things easier. And I didn't seek out this job because I can make a certain amount of money or anything like that, but it pushed me to have a strong work ethic, to not depend on someone else to take care of me. And I have been taking care of myself for years now. I bought a house when I was 24. I joined the Directors Guild when I was 23. These were never things that I intended on doing, but these are things that I think I was heavily inspired by because she made me work hard to achieve these things and to understand the weight that money carries and what it means to save money. My mom is another mentor. I'll use the word actor, but I don't really think I was acting. I started acting as an actor when I was 3. I was doing commercials, eating cereal for money. So I don't know how much acting was involved. Like, you feed me, I'm usually pretty happy. I love food. But my mom did quit her career because she realized it was difficult to take care of 2 kids, one of whom had to be driven around all over town to auditions and fittings and callbacks and commercial shoots. And my mom didn't take my money. She didn't pocket any and say like, well, I'm technically, her manager because I'm, driving her around all day, making sure she's wearing nice clothes for camera. She invested my money for me. And she, took me to the accountant and we did our taxes together. And I was 5 years old, sitting there with my little cup of coffee that was mostly creamer than coffee, but still sitting there sipping on it because now her kid's making enough money that she has to file taxes. But my mom was very professional about it. And she, she'd read the stories about, Gary Coleman and other actors whose parents had taken advantage of them. And she understood that, this won't be my career. She told me very early on, you're not going to do this for a living. You're going to go to college and you're going to have a real job, but do this while you can and make the money. Because she wasn't the person whose idea it was for me to do this. She just kind of got stuck with the job of taking me around to all the auditions. And she's definitely a mentor because she's always taught me how to invest money. And anytime I have a question of like, what do I do? Do I put money in my IRA? I don't, anything like that, despite the fact that she's never worked in finance. She doesn't work. I mean, she's a housemaker. Now my dad's retired too, but she doesn't work. She is one of the smartest people I know because she just reads all day. She reads articles and she used to go to the library and like look at the stock trends and invest that way. And she's just, again, I'm mentioning 2 family members, but they're 2 very strong women in my life who weren't afforded the salary that I'm currently afforded, but I would be remiss to say that I don't have it because of them.
Well, that's the thing. Like, and that's the purpose of this podcast. Like, a mentor, unintentional mentor is, your grandmother and your mom, like somebody you're looking up to. You're telling a story now that's decades old about people who've had a long lasting impact. And I'm sure you probably had like broad conversations with them about it. But there are things like this that we have with people that we often forget to say, like, your impact has allowed me to buy a house at 24, focus on my career, save my money. Like, those are the stories that we forget to tell. And that's why we're having this conversation, because there are people, even if one person here's your story. And it's like, you know what? Money matters. And that changes the direction of their life. Or they hear the story of, I have a kid that wants to be an actor, or blah, 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 blah. I should look at setting their future up because it's uncertain. That to me makes this podcast worth it. So that's why I want to tell stories like yours. And that's why I want to tell stories like others, because it's those stories that really change the course and the direction of your life. As I've physically abused all of my equipment. Uh, so let's kind of talk about the overarching career. I know you mentioned the one gentleman that's the AD who made a difference in your life. Is there any other people that has either kind of like given you advice, like I your IMDb credit is available for all to see, and I'll probably put it in the show notes. And I'm really not here to kind of be your autobiographer, but I'm sure there's people over the course of your career who have given you nuggets of knowledge, like your grandmother and your mom and the AD that you mentioned, that have kind of changed the trajectory about the way you see things. So, who else do you have that kind of fits that mold for you?
Um, I currently am a key second assistant director on the show NCIS Los Angeles. We're on our hiatus. We just finished filming season 12. One of the first assistant directors, usually in television, there are two, because you have to film episode to episode. So one person's filming, the other person's prepping. One of the first ADs who also directs some of the episodes is named Eric Pott. And he gave a really good piece of advice to me, which was get the first shot, and then you can go from there. It's an old studio system of reporting to the studio what your first shot was. There are stories of, multiple films where you're not getting a first shot off until like 6 p.m. because you're setting the shot, you're waiting for something to happen, something went wrong, or it's just taking a long time. The director can't decide what they want, people are fighting behind the scenes, whatever it is. But the studios would be upset because it's very expensive to make television. It's very expensive to make film. And you had to report to them. And they would then, if you had a trend of taking forever to get a first shot in, they would come back to you and say, like, what the fuck is happening? Why are we allowed to curse here? You're on mute, sorry.
It's okay. I try to, so I don't overstep you when you're talking. So say shit, fuck, damn. And when I upload the podcast, it's going to be uploaded as, sensitive language, but I'm actually going to Texas the end of this week with Jen to see her brother. So I'm going to have her 5-year-old nephew and niece just say variations of the word bad word, so that they're going to censor everything out.
Gotcha.
In a very cute way. So yeah, shit, fuck, damn. Don't care.
Okay, cool. But so you have this trend of things aren't happening fast enough, and it's costing us a lot of money. You're paying for every individual to be standing around on set, actors, costumers, grips, electricians, and it's very stressful. And so this really good piece of advice that Eric Pott gave me was, make sure we can get the first shot. Everything after that we can work on, we can plan, we can make work. And on huge days, you're kind of thinking, I need all the elements there as early as possible. I don't want to wait on things. We're a largely daylight dependent exterior show, because on our show, Los Angeles is one of the other characters. We like filming in locations that are either iconic or just look really interesting. Strangely enough, all the crimes are usually like solved within one day. And so it's all like the actors are in the same costumes. I don't know. I'll just say they're a very efficient team. We have a very efficient special operations team in the NCIS Los Angeles office.
It's very true.
They're just very good at their jobs. They just make sure that every bad guy goes straight to prison in the same day. But when we are filming on a soundstage in particular, it takes a long time, because lighting a set is meticulous and based on different camera angles. You light certain directions, and is it a night scene, in which case where is the light coming from? It all takes a long time. But as long as you can get that first shot, especially on those days where maybe we're waiting on an actor because there was an availability issue and they weren't available until 11 o'clock in the morning. So they can't even come in till 11. Then we have to do their hair and makeup and blah, blah, blah. What can we do in the meanwhile? As long as we start rolling those cameras, we can make most things happen from that point. There are enough people with varying levels of intelligence, as he would say, that we can make something happen. We will find something to shoot. There are different motivators depending on what directors you have for the episode. There are different things that you can kind of say to get things to move faster, to get things to move slower, where we can manipulate the day, but we can't do anything until we start rolling.
That's awesome. I think that's the best piece of advice that I have ever heard given for film, is get the first shot.
It makes sense because, when depending, we have very good actors on NCIS LA. They come to set very prepared. They understand that, yes, for them, it's a passion, they're acting and they're very fortunate, but they also understand it's a job and that we're all dependent on their performance, because if they don't know their lines, none of us get to go home and none of us get to see our kids. It's not just about whether or not they get to see their kids. And I think almost all of them have kids at this point because it's, they've been shooting this for 12 seasons. So, many of the actors have gotten married over the course of, the show so far, or, even if their kids are grown up and gone to college, they all have kids, they all want to go home, they have spouses, they have lives outside of the show. And they're very professional in that sense. There are other shows where actors are consistently late and you are standing around waiting. What can we do? And sometimes you are able to talk to your producers, your directors into, maybe we film this while we're waiting and maybe we do this instead. And as a second AD, where I give actors their call times, but the first AD is the person who's telling me, like, this is where the timeline I think is for tomorrow. So I'm not going to bring in LL Cool J, 5 hours before he's supposed to hit set. And so sometimes on different projects, you can kind of use the motivator of, hey, we don't want this actor sitting around in their trailer waiting all day, to bring them in at a certain time. The first AD will say, let me know when they're ready, when they're camera ready, they're dressed, their hair, makeup's done, everything like that. And if the director's particularly slow, the first AD will go to the director and be like, hey, like so-and-so's here and they're ready to go. Like we need to start this, because otherwise they're going to hit set and be very grumpy that they had to sit in their trailer all day, and use that as like a motivator, which is probably a secret I shouldn't be saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's easy to get, I'll say, lost in the sauce when you're filming, because it's a very interesting privilege to be a director on a show or on a movie. And, you get to put your vision to now a memory card. I was going to say film, but a memory card. But that just means that you have to manage your own time. And yes, the ADs are there to help do it for you, but it's easy to ask for another take. Oh, let's get this insert shot. Like, oh, the beach looks really nice. Let's get some like footage of, the surfers on the waves. We don't have time, especially when we're daylight exterior, the sun sets. We don't have time for all of this. And it's a lot of studios don't really have the same perspective that they had with like the auteurs of the past of, we'll just come back tomorrow and do this. You need permits. You're employing a lot of people to come out here for the day. Your extras, your actors, etc. They're all on contract. Like, we need to go because we don't have tomorrow.
Yeah, and you also have people who are contractually obligated for today, and tomorrow they're contractually obligated somewhere else.
Exactly.
So you never know. Like, I completely respect all of that. I'm going to hit you with a hard question because, you are someone I have never seen flinch or give an iota of imposter syndrome. But you're also somebody who could be perceived as extremely young age-wise in their career. So have you received or learned and this is your opportunity to give advice if you have it, but have you received any kind of advice or recommendation for somebody who has helped you kind of, um, not overlook or bypass, but just kind of feel comfortable in your role given where you are?
One of the opportunities that the DGA training program allows, it was created to help people to join the Directors Guild who had different perspectives, who came from different backgrounds, ultimately meaning they wanted people of color, they wanted women, because it was a lot of white dudes. And I kind of came up around a lot of other trainees who were, again, people of color, who are women. And typically the shows that hire trainees are shows in which a trainee graduate are working. It's rare that, I think Dunkirk was one of the only projects, I think, where I was a trainee and no one else on that show was a trainee. I should like say that, like, we call like all project shows, even like movies,
Right.
we'll call a show.
Right.
Not like Dunkirk, the TV show. Ooh.
Coming out 2021 on Fox.
Please, it'd be HBO Max. Come on. But it's rare that you work on a project, where there wasn't a trainee graduate. And so I'm usually learning from people who were recent graduates, a lot of whom were also young when they started the program or were graduating the program. I think the biggest advice that they've given me is just like, don't falter. And it's very easy to. I all day, even now, I've been an AD now for about 4 years. I just finished a project where there was it was the best boy electrician. Every time he spoke to me, it just seemed like, I'm not going to say it was, maybe it's just the way he spoke. I didn't get to know him that well. It was, I worked with him for 2 days, but every time he spoke to me, it felt like he was talking down to me. And as a woman, it's very annoying. As a young woman, it's even more annoying because it just feels like my life, my career means nothing to you. You just see me as someone who is going to clean up messes for you and make your life simpler. Instead of asking me politely, hey, can we get one more walkie? Hey, do you mind checking? I guess the restrooms are a little, blah, blah, blah. They're a little messy, whatever. It just was like, Melissa, the bathrooms are a mess. Like, that's not my job. I'm an assistant director, which means I will ask someone to clean them, but I don't clean the bathrooms and I'm not your mom. So I don't know what you're expecting me to do right now. Melissa, my department needs one more walkie. Okay, dude, copy that. I'll get a walkie to you. Don't be a dick.
Yeah.
But they have to talk to me like that. They would never talk to a guy like that. I went to set and I was talking to the first AD who was of a set. I'm not going to say which one because I feel, with IMDb, I feel like it's so easy to like pick project, click on crew, and it's so easy to identify what I'm talking about. But one of the first ADs is a woman. And so we weren't talking loudly. We weren't talking in front of camera, preventing anyone from blocking the shot, but we were talking. And one of the camera operators had to say, all right, girls, stop gossiping, but loudly enough for the whole crew to hear. And so I said equally as loud, would you say that to the male ADs that work on my staff? No response, because he wouldn't. Because he has to make a joke about how women gossip and God forbid there are 2 women in a managerial position on set. And we can't be working. If we're talking, we have to be gossiping and doing anything other than our jobs. But what I've learned from, those ADs, because sometimes when I was a trainee, I would go back to the AD if something like that happened to me. And they would just say, just don't give them shit. Just walk away and just prove that you can still do your job. Prove that you can do your job better than a male AD. Prove that you can be a professional and don't give them reason to make fun of you. Like the best thing you can do is just do your job well. Because when you react to those sorts of comments and you are then seen as emotional, or I don't know, it's frustrating because you can watch guys like throw things and throw fits on set and say fuck it, we'll do it live or whatever, and yeah, those things go viral and everyone's like, wow, that guy's kind of an asshole, but they still get to work. But if someone catches me angry or crying, oh, she must be on her period, or oh, she's probably having a bad breakup, or whatever they think goes on in women's lives that apparently are more important than our jobs. I don't know, it's very frustrating. So I guess, coming from learning from other people who, may have graduated the program young or without a lot of quote unquote experience, they didn't go through years and years of being a PA and, working on some film that destroyed them or what have you, or coming just from people who have kind of streamlined the process like I did, understanding early on, like, this is what I want to do and I know the fastest route to do it. I'm not going to get lost doing a bunch of jobs on set that I don't enjoy. I think it's just do your job well so no one has reason to say anything otherwise.
You are just dropping awesome like quotes one right after the other, so that I know that this is going to be like very valuable for a lot of people. And everything you're saying, like I've seen, you know, the projects I work on, whether it is in film, or marketing or whatever, I don't look for a gender or an age. Like I prefer, in all honesty, I prefer to work with women. And the reason I prefer to work with women is the guys have that dude mentality where it is exactly everything that you've just said. And that's the shit that slows down projects for me. Whether it is a marketing project, whether it is something that's graphic design or a film or even creative project I'm working on, that like bullshit mentality, because it slows down the morale of everybody. Because it just takes one guy to make an entire project. And I say guy, legitimately, like one dude, white dude swinging a penis, bringing an entire day down because your behavior and lack of respect for somebody impacts the morale and quality of a project. And every project that I've worked on where I've had majority women, regardless of sexual preference or race, I have had a great experience because I am working with equals creatively, and I am working with people who want to do a good job over want to validate their ego. And look, there's some absolute egos out there regardless of gender, but like it's the stuff that makes me not want to do projects like that anymore. Working with guys that were willing to talk down to people regardless of experience. And like I will talk to anybody. Like I don't care. I would much rather work with somebody that has no experience and a lot of passion than somebody that has a lot of experience that will try to take over a project because they think they can do it better. So we've kind of touched on a lot of parts of your life from your ADs and your moms and your dads, but and your mom and your grandmom, not your dad. We haven't talked about your dad, and it's okay. Sorry,
He's
you mentioned
fine.
your dad. You mentioned your dad retiring, and I'm like, wow.
Wow, how inspirational.
Well, no, I mean, it's look, very rare do you have people today who stay in a job long enough to retire. I'm seeing a lot of people, not just in the film industry, be transient where they're like here, they're there 2 or 3 years. So retirement now means something different to a lot of different people. Retire used to be you spend 20 years in a job and that's your reward um, is retiring. Now retirement means you hit an age or a financial goal and you're just stopping working. I don't know about you, but I'm probably going to be that 100-year-old person still going up to do what I do, whatever it is I'm doing every day, because I enjoy working, whether it is on a project or anything. But that's besides the point. It's not about me. It's about you. So let's talk about you for just a little bit more. Um, what does we've talked about family and we've talked about career, but who aspirationally has kind of motivated you? Like, is there somebody outside of your industry, outside of friends and family, that has been a standard bearer or guidepost for you that you kind of look up to?
If I'm like completely honest, not
Yeah, please.
really.
Good.
I I think and this is kind of the first time I've ever thought about it. Well, actually, no, you know what? Hold on. I am going to mention one, and I will say this is probably like one of the kings of like unintentional mentors. And I actually got the opportunity to tell him this himself. I think my biggest mentor, at least growing up, was Weird Al Yankovic. So I don't know how much knowledge you have of Weird Al. I was
Uh,
obsessed with Weird
Dare to Be
Al.
Stupid was
Okay,
probably one of
perfect.
the, yeah, we're good.
Okay, I'm too young for Dare to Be Stupid to be one of my first albums. Technically, my like first album that I bought was Straight Outta Linwood, which is like already making me turn into some like obnoxious millennial. Like, oh, that was
Not
your
at all.
first
That
Weird Al album, really? Not even Poodle Hat. But so I became a Weird Al fan when he became viral online, which was with White and Nerdy, because it was like the perfect timing with YouTube and Facebook and MySpace music and everything like that. And I'm someone who, when I enjoy a movie or a show, I read the wiki, I watch the interviews. I think something that, this is like weird little sidetrack, but is kind of a teller of my life. I didn't grow up thinking I'm going to be an AD or I'm going to work on set. I thought I was going to be a lawyer. I thought I was going to be a criminal lawyer and go to Yale and do all these things because, again, my mom was like, you're not going to be an actor for a living. And I watched Law and Order and I was like, this is great. Law and Order used to be my favorite show as a kid. And so I was like, I'm going to do this. And so my whole family was obsessed. They were like, Melissa's going to be a lawyer. I'm Jewish. So that's especially like an added like, oh, she's going to be a lawyer. She's going to make the money. My grandma was so happy. Oh my God. So I was going to be a lawyer and go to Yale and, make all this money and live in a mansion. And then they'd all come live in my guest house or something silly like that. And then I was like, oh, maybe I could do entertainment law. Oh, a lot of entertainment lawyers become producers. Oh, why would I spend years of my life going to law school and being a lawyer if I want to be, why wouldn't I just go to film school? So that was that weird jump. But it was really telling for me in retrospect, because I used to buy DVDs because I wanted to see the behind the scenes features.
Yep.
And that was like,
Same.
that was my thing. And so now in retrospect, I'm like, oh, okay, this makes sense. Like, you like the process. Okay, cool. But yeah, so I am one of those people that like has to learn everything about the things that I'm interested in, which is why I know so much about Weird Al. I promise I'm not a stalker. So Weird Al, very smart kid, obviously picked up the accordion, blah, 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 blah. He was valedictorian of his high school at age 16. And he went to school and majored in architectural design. He didn't go and like major in music theory or anything like that. Like, he went to Cal San Luis Obispo, Cal Poly, one of those schools somewhere, but I know it's San Luis Obispo. And he was recording music in the bathroom to play on the Dr. Demento show, but while getting this degree in something completely different than what he thought he was going to do in his life. And I've met him a few times. I got to meet him a couple times after concert. I got to actually work with him for a day on the Goldbergs. And that day I was like completely emotional. It was like absolutely incredible because he was wearing the 80s wig.
That's
And
awesome.
one of the things, it's like growing up with him without, post LASIK and with the hair, to actually like see him like how he was, that was really cool for me. But he wrote a couple of children's books and I went to one of the book signings. And at that point, I met him a couple times and, he like vaguely recognized me, but I was able to say, because I was at that point graduating high school, I should say, I had got into NYU for film. And I was able to tell him, like, you're such an inspiration for me because I spent hours of my high school career studying for AP exams and trying to do well on my SATs and my ACTs and taking college classes over the summer breaks and going above and beyond because I did not know what the future holds. I mean, held, but holds for me. Even at that point, yes, I was going to NYU for film, but I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't think, oh, I'm going to be an assistant director. I'm going to, I was like, I have no talent. I didn't grow up making, short films or doing anything like that. I was one of the few NYU kids that didn't apply with a film. I applied with a story. And I just said, like, you are such an inspiration because I always worked hard, not knowing what was ahead for me. And he got up and hugged me. And, he thought that was such a nice thing to say. But that to me just shows what I think it takes to do anything. It's to not, think about the end point and do all of the obligatory steps just to get to that end point. It's to try hard and to go above and beyond, because maybe that end point isn't your end point. Maybe somewhere halfway along the way, you realize this sucks. I don't like this. But if you've only done the work to do that one thing, it's hard to jump around and go somewhere else. I think it's easier now because of the recession, where I think a lot of companies realize that the majors that people had in college don't necessarily mean they can only work in those fields, because how many things like closed or how many people are unemployed after that point. There's so many people I went to film school with who aren't working in film. They're still working. But that being said, I don't think it behooves anyone to just go like step by step, read the one book that says, okay, if I want to do this, I have to get this major, do this internship, take this job, blah, blah, blah. Just, try hard to be a well-rounded individual. And that way, if the one thing you thought you're going to do doesn't work out, you have other opportunities. And so that's what I learned from Weird Al. So when Weird Al wants to, call me and personally thank me for that endorsement, my phone is here. Volume up.
So I have a bucket list for this podcast of my unintentional mentors. Like, of this wall over here, the reality is, like, Kevin Smith is the only one that I could actually speak to. Weird Al is on that list. I have the VHS of UHF. I have the DVD of UHF. Like, that is my, if I am sick and eating, soup for whatever, like, UHF goes on. Because to me, I don't care what anybody else thinks. Like, that movie just gets me, like, right here every single time. If I ever, aside from his story, because, like, I grew up with a Weird Al cassette. I have my first edition through fifth edition D&D books just down here. What Weird Al kind of taught me was, like, it's okay to be you and accept it. So I love the fact that he is one of your unintentional mentors. Like, and that story was amazing. Thank you.
There is no bad Weird Al story. I have worked with other people who have worked with Weird Al, and let me tell you about the Goldberg stay, just to kind of give you, like,
Please do,
how things work on set. So most comedy shows are filmed with over 5 days. If you're doing a multicam show, again, you do like rehearsal days. Like, usually the first day is like a table read day. And depending on, I came up in like kids television. So you have limited hours you can work with kids each day, and you have to school them and blah, blah, blah. But you typically do a table read in front of like network people and studio people, because they also want to give their notes. And you may do a little bit of light blocking if there's time, but sometimes like the actors go home immediately after that and everyone's working on rewriting it, because a lot of those multicam scripts start out really rough. And then over the next couple of days, you're doing blocking, usually on I'll call it the Wednesday in quotes, because sometimes your shooting schedule's like Tuesday through Monday, or, Wednesday through Tuesday, or, whatever. But on the Wednesday, the third day, you bring in like your camera crew, your DP, like your grip and electric, and they will watch the rehearsals. They can mark and be prepared for when we shoot it, usually on the last 2 days. And sometimes you have an audience day, obviously now not as much during COVID, but other times you don't, and you just add in the laughter after the fact, which your friend Tamara knows a lot about. But on single camera shows, like The Goldbergs, New Girl. These are shows I've worked on, or just, I don't know, The Good Place, whatever, single camera comedies, where you don't have the 4 cameras going at once. You have 4 wall sets as opposed to 3 wall sets. We still shoot over 5 days, but you're filming each of those 5 days. So for the Goldbergs Day, Al was only available for the Friday, the last day, which meant we had to schedule all of his work on that day. He was in a few scenes. The gist of the episode was Adam, who's the youngest Goldberg, who Patton Oswalt kind of does the narration for. He and his girlfriend were in a rough spot, kind of in the middle of like breaking up. And his mom wanted to keep them together. And one of the things that kind of showed they were in the middle of the breaking up was the fact that there was a little bit of a disjointed, he likes Weird Al. She's not really into Weird Al anymore. Like, he's still kind of nerdy and into these things, and she's, not sharing those interests. And so they go to a Weird Al concert and she's not interested and she leaves. And so the mom, Beverly, she goes to talk to Al at his tour bus afterward to try and get him to help get the kids back together. But so we had to shoot like him on stage and 2 tour bus scenes. The day comes and it's just going to be a big day. We have a bunch of extras. We have a bunch of locations. We're filming at the Sony lot. So the bus has to be at one point of the lot, near the kind of like the loading docks. That's where we staged that scene. The stage scene, we were filming on one of our sound stages. We built the stage and kind of just did like black off for the rest of it. We find out that he is recovering from food poisoning. So, he comes in. I wasn't running base camp, which is the job that trainees or ADs do, where you're kind of like getting the actors ready. That's the base camp job. I was there that day helping with all the extras and getting them through because we had a bunch of crowd scenes. So the base camp AD, or excuse me, trainee, is telling everyone like, hey, he's recovering from food poisoning. I guess he had it the day before. He says he's okay. He doesn't want to order lunch. He's just going to relax in his trailer until we need him. So in my head, I'm like, oh, this is awful. But what are we going to do? He's only available this one day. We can't push the shoot. He powers through. Like, he's, very quiet, gets in the van, goes to set. But when he comes on and the camera is rolling, he's there. He has like basically it's like we're not doing a whole concert with him. It's just him going like, hey guys, I'm Weird Al, welcome to the show, kind of thing. Like accordion on, like, whatever. He comes out full energy, amazing, super nice, and like completely on. Get that scene. He goes back to his trailer, lays down for a couple hours while we get some other BS scenes. And then we get to the concert stuff, someone has to cue him. And because everyone knows that I'm like the biggest Weird Al fan, they're like, do you want to cue him? And so I'm like, okay, I can do this. I'll wear like one of my concert Weird Al shirts, and I've got a Hawaiian shirt on. Like, I came to work like this is my day. And he comes back and we do the rehearsal. And in between the setups, because camera setups can take a long time. And at this point, it's 10 o'clock at night. It's not like it's, 4 in the afternoon. It's 10 o'clock at night. It is late. And we still have hours of work left. And I say, hey, would you like your chair? I can have your prop chair brought over so that you're resting in between setups, so you don't have to stand. Because I know that he's going through physically a lot. And he's like, no, I'm okay. And he stands the whole time. He doesn't need to sit. He isn't asked to go back to his trailer, even though it's like a 20-minute setup. He just stands there and hangs out. I get him a water. He says, thank you so much. He's just hanging out. In the meantime, the whole crew is coming up to him. This is now more about Weird Al than this is about me, but this is very important because he's the greatest guy in history. Everyone's
No, it's
coming up
okay.
to
I'm
him.
following you. I'm thoroughly engaged.
Good. So he's like standing there, just minding his own business. Everybody on this crew, because crew sets lean a little older. Al 10 years ago, I brought my kid to a concert and it was the best concert and it was the best bonding experience we've ever had. Will you sign this? He's signing things, he's taking pictures. Like, he is so generous with his time, despite the fact that this dude's insides wanted to come out of him probably 12 hours ago. He is so nice. He doesn't say no to a single picture. I got a picture with him of us in the 80s look. Like, everyone had photos, everyone got him like signatures, everything. Like, no one left this dude alone. And I was in this uncomfortable position where I'm like, should I like try and like fend them off? But he was like, anytime someone come up, he'd be like, oh, hey, come over, and talk forever and sign. And it was incredible. He was there until 2 a.m. working. The only thing he asked for was that we pick him up from home and drive him home afterward because he didn't feel good enough to drive.
Completely reasonable.
Very, like, we'll do that for just random actors who feel fine. Like, the most reasonable request. He was just so nice to everybody. And aside from the fact of like, he's a mentor in the sense of like, again, you know, make sure you put in the work because you never know what the end result will be. Be nice. No one has a bad Weird Al story. Every person I've worked with in Hollywood, if I mention Weird Al, they're like, oh, I worked with him on Comedy Bang Bang. Oh, I worked with him when he did a guest thing on, you know, this show or whatever. No one has a bad story. He is so nice. He is just such a good person. He's never said no to helping someone get like a backstage pass, doing a signature, showing up for something. Like, half the shows he appears on, just coming from like my knowledge of working, and I used to be in a relationship with somebody who did casting, it's like, he's not getting what he's quote unquote worth for some of these appearances. He's just doing it. Like, he's getting what's called like favored nations, where everyone agrees to the same rate to help, you know, the production out, or he's getting just like a basic contract. He's not like getting the like $50,000 per appearance he could ask for minimum. He could probably ask for $500,000 for an appearance on any of these shows, and he doesn't get it. I'm sure whatever they offer, he's just like, okay, sure, I'll come in and do it. You think Comedy Bang Bang was paying him like up the ass?
No,
they weren't. I don't know what they were paying him, but I guarantee it wasn't that. But he still showed up.
The reason I let you tell the story, one, besides being thoroughly engaged, is that it absolutely proves your point. Like, it is, you know, look, I have a long history of meeting some of the people that I thought were idols. And there are people that I will not name names that I was like looking up to, who were initially on this wall, potentially never again. Because the illusion is gone when you actually meet the real person, and you met somebody who absolutely lives up to, you know, every standard. I have tons of people I know that have met him through behind the scenes concerts and all that other stuff, and or worked with him in capacities like you. And you're absolutely right. There's not a single person that has a negative story about Weird Al.
If someone like
But I don't.
responds to this with a negative story, I don't even want to hear it. Like, I mean, I kind of want to hear it, but I don't think it exists. Like, I think they're lying. I'm pretty sure they're lying.
Or look, they're absolutely responsible for it being a negative story. You know, it is. There are people who intentionally do shit just to have a bad story, and
Yeah.
I don't understand it. But I don't want to end this episode on Weird Al, because this episode is about you. So one of the things, I'm going to switch topics out of the entertainment industry and out of the family, but one of the things I absolutely love about you is your complete adoration of your fiance.
Oh, he's
Um,
okay.
and uh, it is adorable and I love it. But did you have anybody, because look, I turned 45 this year. Jesus. There are people that don't have your maturity as far as the relationships of the world go. Do you have any of those unintentional mentors that kind of guided you, or is this just like you knew?
um a little bit came from, so I was, oh my God, it's coming out in this podcast. I mean, anyone who knows, you can probably kind of tell from like my social media, I guess, if you tried hard enough. I was engaged before I was engaged to Scott. I was in a relationship for about 4.5 years. We were engaged, and we ended it. And I think a lot of that had to do with kind of, I'll call it growing pains of I was excelling and moving throughout my own career in a way that I didn't really think would happen, at least when we had started dating. Like the person I was previously engaged to, we met when I was an intern. And I didn't know that I was going to be an assistant director and do the training program. And I didn't know that I'd be going to Europe for 3 months to work on a film called Dunkirk. And it was a lot. And I realized that, one, maybe not the best idea for me to date someone in the industry, because it's not a competition thing. I mean, I know ADs who are in relationships with other ADs. I don't know how that works. But they're happy. That's great for them. For me, I don't want to talk about more work that I have to. I don't want to compare days with someone who also does one of the hardest jobs on set. But we kind of grew apart, despite the fact that we were like this close to being as close as a couple as you basically can, aside from having children. And I realized that a lot of that, I think, came from career goals, not just in the sense of like the individual job, but in the sense of what it takes to do the job that you want to do. And that person it wasn't that they weren't motivated. It was just that we had different like styles of going about things. And I think it was ultimately one of the things that I realized we're never going to agree upon. There are other issues, a lot of like fundamental issues. But, when that relationship ended, I wasn't really sure what would kind of like happen to me. We broke up, and now this is kind of like, here's like lowest part of my life. So at that point, I was already an AD. I'm from LA, born and raised, and he wasn't. And so we lived together in an apartment. And so the night that we broke up, I had to pack a bag. It was a Wednesday night, and go to my parents' house, and then wake up the next morning at 4 a.m. for work. Like no break, no downtime, pack up the bag, go to my parents' house, lay there in bed, get up for work. And I was just kind of like confused. I was very confused. I was very lost. And I ended up living with them for a while. I know a couple of my friends were like, why don't you just get an apartment? But I think that was also the time in my life where I was interested in like buying a house, in which case I was like, well, let's just stay here. I paid them some rent, but save money on the overall, deposit and the lease and whatever, and then figure it out. And once I had got my house, about 5-ish months later, and was moving in, I met my fiance on Bumble, my current fiance, Scott. I like opened up Bumble, and I was like, let's just look for things that you actually like. Let's not, mess around. I don't beat around the bush that much anymore. Mostly because I don't have time. I don't fuck around. For me, it's like, if I like something, I like something. I'm not going to hide. I'm not in high school anymore. I'm not going to pretend like I don't like Weird Al because it's embarrassing or nerdy or whatever. Like, if you don't like me at this point, you're not going to like me. I'm not going to try and make you like me by hiding certain aspects of myself. Like, either I'm your type of person or I'm not, and it's okay if I'm not. And so I was, on Bumble, and it's like, okay, here's some guy who just says like his like profile is like, I'm 6'2", I like adventure. Fuck you. Like, who are you? What's the point?
Well, no, you're not, and no, you're not. So
yeah, I'm like, are you really? And I then started like seeing because it tells you like what your job is, and I'm a huge foodie. Like, I enjoy cooking. I love baking, but I think I definitely extend more energy watching other people do it than I actually do it myself. Like, some of my favorite YouTube channels are just cooking channels. And I will happily spend hours on the couch just like watching cooking videos and like reading about recipes and whatever. And I started seeing people who worked in like the food industry. And I was like, this is interesting. Okay, let's get into like someone who will cook for me. Okay, I don't want to do all the cooking myself. And that's where I eventually found, like, I like was exclusively swiping for people who worked at restaurants, like a weird person. And that's how I found Scott's profile. But his profile was also just like an actual profile. I actually have it. I'm gonna pull it up. You'll probably have to
Oh God, here we go. Let's do it.
You'll have to pull a little downtime. I do intend on this like being something we have at the wedding, our like little Bumble profiles.
Love
I
it.
have to, here it is. Okay. Also, like, Scott, if you hear this, I'm sorry.
I'm
It
not.
says, good. It says, beer nerd and restaurant manager that's looking for the worst dad joke. I'm into horror movies, singing in the shower, and cooking without recipes. Shamelessly addicted to podcasts, dancing of all kinds, and board games. Like, you know who he is.
Yeah.
Like, that's a profile. Mine was, because I also was like, all right, profile. I said, occasionally funny, constantly hungry, lover of baking, TV, musicals, pancakes, dogs, and Costco, looking for someone to go to a Weird Al concert with me.
That is the perfect, knowing you as I like that, I could not have paid somebody to write something more perfect for you.
Like, I mean, hopefully not. That'd be weird. They know me more than I know myself. But
No, it's just one of those things, like you see people's profiles and they you can clearly tell that they do not know themselves.
yeah,
And their profile is written by their friend who's like, oh, you're really liking blah blah. Like your profile is to a T perfect.
I think, long story long, what I kind of got out of the failure of, and that relationship too was like my first real relationship, that like relationship that literally was almost the only relationship I'd ever been in for the rest of my life. But I also had come from, and this is a situation in which like my mom and grandma maybe weren't the best mentors. Like, they also married like the first men in their lives. For my grandma, that's just kind of like how it was at the time. For my mom in the 80s, I think it was just like, okay, this makes sense. But for me, it was like, that was almost one of the biggest mistakes I'd ever made. But what I kind of learned from talking about it with other people, even before I met Scott, there are a lot of people I know who have been through divorces and had been through like really bad, I mean, it happens, like really bad breakups. It was just that you don't leave the relationship because it's scarier to leave it than it is unbearable to be in it. And I really like extended the how unbearable can I make this? But when I had like immediately broken up with him, and it wasn't very public. Like, we were very quiet about it on social media, to the point of when I announced when like when Scott and I like posted a photo together, there were a bunch of people who were like, what? Like, we were very quiet about the breakup because we had a lot of mutual friends and it felt almost embarrassing that we were engaged and this was ending. But at work, it was very public because it had happened and it was emotional and I was very raw, but I still had to like do my job. And, I was on a show where we all knew each other so personally, but there were other women who like came up to me and said like, I wish I had done what you did before I'd gotten married, because the divorce was so much worse. And, and like going back from there was so much harder. And, I'm glad there are mistakes that I made with that relationship that I wish I could undo, but I'm glad that ultimately I figured it out. And so that's one of the situations where I think like my biggest, it's not really a mentor, but I think like I learned the most from myself. I learned like
you are allowed to be your own mentor.
it feels weird. I think I just like, realized what made me unhappy and realized that like I don't actually have to put up with this. Like I don't have to hate this aspect of my life, and I can find happiness with someone else. And ultimately, my relationship with Scott works so well because he manages a restaurant. And so he does basically what I do, but for the restaurant world. Like he is in a way also on call all the time. There are other managers, and he's fortunate that like, he doesn't have to be there from hours before, opening, hours after closing. But on our second date, I was on hiatus from my show. And so I wasn't working. And I had kind of explained my job to him, but I don't think he like quite understood that like the on-call aspect of it. But we're hanging out at his place, having a couple drinks, we're literally just chatting. Like he and I would like talk for hours because we had so much in common and our personalities were meshing and we're still getting to know each other. And his phone rings and it's someone from work because there's a leak in the kitchen. Like the roof's just leaking into the kitchen. And every time he'd get a call, because it was like, he'd get a call from whoever the shift lead is who's supposed to be closing, and he would basically tell her what to do. And she'd say, okay, thank you, bye. And so, she had her marching orders. He's obviously not there. There's not an awful lot he can do. He apologized. Then she'd call again. And while he's like on the phone, he kept mouthing, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm like, it's okay. Really, it's okay. This is what it's going to be like for me in like 2 months when I go back to work. And I think it works so well because we both understand that about each other's lives, that like we are in a sense always on call and available to answer a question. And it's not in either of our nature to, hang up the phone and turn the phone off. Like we have to set boundaries often for ourselves. And I'm continually learning how to do that as I keep moving up and my job gets harder and harder. Like there is a point where if I get a call on the weekend or I get a text on the weekend, I have to kind of determine like, is this a problem I have to solve right now? Can I solve it Monday morning? Can I solve it Sunday night? Like, what is the priority of like when I should have to do this? Because otherwise people are just going to keep bothering me on the weekend unnecessarily. But, I think that's what really works for us. It's like understanding that we have jobs that carry some sort of weight and we have to answer these questions, but being there when it's important to, and learning when someone else can solve this, or I'll get to this when it actually matters. Like it doesn't matter Saturday night at 9 p.m. It affects nobody right now. Like setting boundaries, very important for us.
Well, you learned a lesson that a lot of people take almost their entire lives to learn, which is finding a partner who understand and respects that about your career. One of the things that I love about you, and I've been proud as your friend to watch for years, you learn things at a far more rapid rate than most people do. And that's just the nature of you, and I've known it since the day I met you and the day I worked with you. Like I have no question about your career path from the day you like bellowed across a set, quiet on the set, where you were going trajectory wise. But the lesson you learned from your previous relationship, and you are absolutely allowed to be your previous self. It can be a mentor to who you are right now. Like it's what I love about your relationship with Scott. It's what I love about my relationship with Jen. Like you found somebody who understands the requirements, necessities, and boundaries that your chosen career has. As we're having this conversation, it's a Sunday and Jen's upstairs and she knows that this is important to me and this is where I want to be. And in some relationships, that's not something people can understand. And it's amazing that you've gotten to that point so quickly. And I'm glad it did not cost you a marriage and a divorce to learn it. So good on you.
I don't know if it comes from like, okay, I was on set as like a 3-year-old and had to put on like big girl pants and be like a quote unquote professional as a child. I do think it's odd because, on paper, it seems like everything moved like very quickly for me. I'm still learning. Like I still like my check engine lights on in my car. I don't really know what to do. I mean, other than like bring my car in, but I will like text my mom and be like, how do I change my oil, and how do, there are definitely things I don't know how to do. And there are like, I think there are definitely aspects of my life where I can definitely be an immature baby. But I think that because my work ethic is at a certain, I tell myself like I have to be at 110% at all times. Like I actually said no to a job, which is my first time saying no to a job ever, because as a freelance person, it's hard to say no because you don't know when your next job will be. And especially coming from COVID, I was unemployed for 6 months straight last year. And that was really scary. But I actually said no to a job because I felt extremely tired. And I knew that if I said yes, I would not give that job the effort that I would, one, think it requires, and two, would reflect well on myself. Like I have worked really hard shows. I have done really difficult projects, but I still give it 110%. I am willing to sleep for 4 hours a night. I am willing to be at work 30 minutes before my call time is to get the job done and to feel organized and, come about or go about the day as I should. But it was my first time recognizing like I'm burnt out. Like I've been filming I pretty much worked 8 months straight during a pandemic, in a field where we are constantly dealing with testing and bringing people into the bubble and people exiting the bubble and everything like that. And, I don't know, my work ethic, I've set it to a very high level, and I completely recognize when people are not at that level. And, sometimes those are the people that are on my team, my PAs, other ADs that I work with. I don't have a lot of control over that, aside from like when I hire them, but, throughout the season, if things happen, it's hard, especially during a pandemic, to be like, okay, let's go a different direction. Who are we going to get? It's booming in Hollywood right now because every project was put on hold for 6 months. And so every movie, every TV show is filming. Like you can't even find people right now to work for you because it's so busy, but I think with that work ethic comes with the fact that like I have trouble maintaining strong relationships with my friends because I'm busy or I'm tired. And those are kind of my two options. I'm busy, I'm tired, and then I'm unemployed, in which case I try and like catch up with them, but it's been like 4 months since I've seen them.
Totally understand it.
And so I'm not, it sucks. Like I have friends, I have like a core couple of friends who I'm very close with all the time. But they also are people that get me, where like if I'm having a rough day, I have a friend, Oren, who I will text her, hey, I know you're at work, no need to respond, just need to vent. And I'll send her like 50 like long text bubbles, like this jerk, blah, 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 or my mom, blah, 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 whatever it is. And either she responds or she doesn't. Maybe the next day she says, hey, I'm just now getting to this. But we understand that about a relationship. But there aren't a lot of people that are like that, because especially in LA, like when there's so much to do and everyone does something different, everyone has their own lives and their own relationships and everything, it's easy for friends to drift away because I'm not there for them all the time. And there's only so many, hey, sorry, I'm just now seeing this text, or hey, sorry, I meant to respond, but I was too tired. And now it's 2 weeks later and it's so embarrassing that I'm a piece of shit like that. Sorry. But, there are definitely like sacrifices I've made or had to make with this job.
Well, I want to pause you. You are not a piece of shit, because look, I mean, relationships wise, what you and Scott have figured out that makes you guys work very well, it's the same thing that needs to apply to friendships. There are people like yourself that I could go without seeing for 6 years, and the minute I see you, no time has passed, and those friendships mean more to me almost than the people I see every day that I know every part of their lives, because I know those friendships that I have to see every day or every week if I go for 2 months working on a project, or if I go 6 months dealing with, my own shit, that friendship won't be there when I come back. Whereas I know people like you and other people that I know that if I don't see you every day for a week, if I need you, I can pick up the phone and you're there if you're available. And if you're not, I totally fucking get it because you have your own shit going on. Um, and that is something that I greatly respect about you is that you are exactly the same way. But no, yeah, I had to stop you because you are far from a piece of shit, my friend. But continue. Let's talk about that path you were on about just, having those core friendships.
It's very important because those friends, I think, are the ones that help me process a lot of stuff. Like, again, like kind of touching on it because it is something that's very odd for me. Like when I said no to that job, like I was texting with Scott and I was texting with Oren, my friend, and I didn't like talk to my mom because my mom wouldn't get it because she would say, of course you're going to say yes to that show. Money, because she's my grandmother's daughter. And again, I'm coming from, I love money. I'm trying to plan a wedding in LA. So that's basically the cost of a car.
I get it.
My car's clearly shitting out on me. So that's going to be another cost of a car. That's 2 cars for those counting at home, 2 cars. So for me, it's like, okay, yeah, let's follow the money. Let's say yes to the show. But from 2019 to 2020, pre-pandemic, I worked on the hardest project I've ever worked on as an AD. I think Dunkirk was one of the hardest things I've ever done, period. And then I was a second AD on 911, which is a Ryan Murphy show. And it's just it was very hard. It was a very difficult show to work on. I was putting in weekends, paid and or unpaid. It was a very difficult project, very rewarding because it was very cool how every episode we were working with a different element. Here's a train, here's a hot air balloon, here's, you're working, you're learning. It was a big, like, I love learning where I'm while I'm at work. I think that if you're not learning or trying to learn, it's absolutely pointless to do whatever it is that you're doing. But it was very difficult. And I felt definitely burnt out after that one. And I could feel myself because I was also coming from, I just wrapped NCIS LA. I went straight into these reshoots without a day's break. I had to work over the weekend doing like stunt rehearsals and everything like that. And just the idea of like, I'm going to have 2 days off and then go into another hard project. Like I was texting with Scott and with Oren. I was just saying, I don't feel bad saying no for the first time ever because I don't feel like I can do this, but it just feels weird. And they were both able to kind of remind me that like, I work very hard. I will get another call for another show. And this isn't the end of my career. It's very busy. I will keep going. I will persevere through this crazy Hollywood train. Whereas, there are probably some friends of mine who have just said like, yeah, do it. Like there were some friends when I was finishing 911 and just saying how tired I was and how, when the idea of coming back for another season was kind of scary because it was adding the COVID element to an already chaotic show. They were like, yeah, just do it. Hey, let's weigh your options. Yeah, just do it. Like, it's okay. It's just work. Because they see my job as freelance, like, oh, I just work for 8 or 9 months at a time. And then I have time off as like, oh, that's easy. I wish I did that too. They don't realize that I work about 80 hours a week.
Right. Yeah. They have no concept that like you're cramming in those 8 months a year's worth of work.
Yeah.
Plus.
And I'm fortunate. One of the reasons why I've always endorsed a union show is because there are no like negotiations of rate or salary. Like we have rate cards that are negotiated and you have to pay us the rate. So I make the same amount of money, assuming it's like the same type of show, no matter what show I work on. And the other guy who's interviewing after me will also make the same amount of money. Doesn't matter if he's a white man, doesn't matter how many other shows he's worked on, we will get paid exactly the same. And that, I love that about my job. They pay us understanding too that we're not going to work, every day out of the year, that we will have bouts of unemployment. We're paid with that in mind. We are given at least ADs are when we finish a show, something called completion of assignment, where they give us a week's pay afterward. And I've had people in other departments be like, I don't know why you get that and I don't get that. Like, one, it's harder for us to find jobs because on a given day on any production, we may need an extra grip or an extra electrician because we are in a bigger set, or we're doing a daylight exterior. So we need more grips because we need people to bring more flags and more solids and more gels in. Or if we're doing a huge warehouse scene, we need more electricians because we need more lights. They only bring in extra ADs when there are like 300 extras or when someone's sick. Otherwise, we don't employ just a random extra AD on a show because we're expensive and unnecessary. That's what PAs are for.
Right.
They're not going to bring me in because they need someone to say, hey, we're rolling, and to do a lockup and just to stop pedestrians from walking the street. They're going to give the PA, they have to pay minimum wage to do that. And so they usually are quote unquote nicer to us, but it's also harder for us to find jobs because there are usually like 3 or 4 ADs on any show, period. That's it. Whereas there are 8 electricians, 8 grips. There's a camera department of like 7 people, as many costumers as you need to dress this amount of people. Makeup and hair get an extra person because we have like 2 more actors or like 10 extras, but we're not afforded that. And so they're nicer to us. But that being said, like, I will work my ass off for 8 months and then I'll take my like 2 or 3 months off. People are always like, you're not going to find another show. I'm like, no, I'm going to take some time off because when I'm also working those hours, I'm not going to the doctor. I'm not, vacuuming my floors and stocking my kitchen. I'm not
sleeping properly, eating properly.
I'm not, doing the bare maintenance. I mean, I don't have kids yet, so I can't imagine. Sometimes it scares me to imagine how to add that balance to it. I can't even get a dog. I want a dog so badly. I want just a little dog to come home to who loves me unconditionally. But between my hours and Scott hours, we can't get a dog, right. And so it's like all my friends are like, yeah, just take the job. It's okay. Just, whatever. I'm like, homie, you work 9 to 5. You've been working out of your apartment for the last year. I physically have had to go to work. I've been getting COVID tested every day at work. I've been managing how are we going to bring in 30 extras and how do we test them in and how do we do this and where are we going to hold them and how everything has expanded. Our footprint is huge during a pandemic. My job has gotten so much harder during this pandemic. I'm going to take some time off. But, I think that's the other thing of like, growing up, getting older, again, coming from kind of planning my second wedding, people that were in my first bridal party are not necessarily in my second because they're people that I've, grown apart from, and people who, especially given the fact like we're in a pandemic, I'm like, why do I have to be the person that constantly reaches out to you? I'm the busier one. And I get that, this pandemic's taken a huge mental toll on a lot of people. I've read multiple articles about people who are, creative types, writers who thought like, I'm unemployed and I'm at home. This is the perfect time. I have no other distractions. They can't write. They're uninspired. They're exhausted. They're fatigued. Like I'm fatigued. And on the weekends, I've had far less to do than I had, when everything was open. When things were open, Scott and I only have one day off together, Saturday, because he has Fridays and Saturdays off and I have Saturdays and Sundays. And so that one day used to be like morning to night, everything. We'd do like a workout class and we'd go shopping and we'd clean and we're making dinner and we're having friends over and it'd be exhausting. I'm more fatigued now because I don't get to have an option. I don't get to pick whether or not I'm going to cancel last minute my plans. I have to stay home. I'm bored.
Well, you guys are also doing the thing that is the opposite of your previous relationship. In your previous relationship, you were so busy, you were hardly able to spend time. And now, thanks to COVID, you guys are always together, which this pandemic has broken up so many relationships because people are like, I could barely stand you for 48 hours total in a week. And now I have to look at you 7 goddamn days. So, yeah, look, I want to just call COVID what it is. But it is literally like relationship therapy 101.
It's, I joke because people are like, oh, like, how's it been for you guys? Scott's been working the whole time. So maybe I'm like, well, thank God you're at work, because otherwise, but we've, for like the weekends that we have, and when I wasn't working, we had those 2 days, like we had the full 2 days. It's, I think it's nice because we're also at a point in with our relationship where we know we don't have to spend every minute together. Where like for some relationships, it's like, okay, I'm going to go see my friends now. And the entire time you're with your friends, you're getting texts like, how's it going? How's your day? When are you coming home?
Right.
Bitch, step off. Like, I'm with my friends right now. Like, because sometimes like with my ex, like, and then this isn't like a therapy and like, I don't know, maybe we'll cut this out, but like,
no, look, honestly, the reason I'm letting this go is this is stuff that I know 60-year-old people that need to learn this lesson, and keeping this in, it's providing valuable insight. Like, look, if somebody hears this is like, okay, I get it now. Great.
Yeah. It would be like, I would invite him, be like, hey, do you want to come hang out with us or whatever? We're going to get, Korean barbecue. We're going out. We're doing the same. Like, no, it's okay. And then constantly like, when do you think you're coming home? When, you were invited. You chose to not come. Stop it. Whereas like with Scott, like he has like a Instagram like message with his friends called like Friday nights are for the boys, where they like play like on the Microsoft Xbox Pass, whatever's on the computer, they play like Sea of Thieves, or they play whatever games. I'm not really into computer games, but like they play stuff and they're, having fun. They moved that to Thursdays, I think now, because now I have Fridays off. But, I get that he needs time with his friends, and I don't want to play with them. They're very nice people. I don't want to hang out with them. Like, right. I'm not going to force myself in to doing something I don't enjoy doing just because I have to spend, if he's not with me, like, what is he doing? Is he thinking about other women? Come on. Like, everyone's entitled to doing whatever they like to do. My friend Oren and I, we watch Great British Bake Off on Sundays. We used to like go up for like a 5-mile walk and then come home, watch Bake Off. That'd be it. Or I would go out dancing with my friend Will, and Scott would, be at work, whatever, no issues. No, like, when you coming home, if he wanted to come join us, sometimes I'd be like, sure. Sometimes I wouldn't even offer the, invitation, because sometimes I just want to hang out with my friends. It doesn't, not everything has to be like, we're holding hands and everyone knows we're in a relationship. Like, right. I think the best part about being in an adult relationship is understanding, like, we each have our own lives and sometimes they converge. And we don't have to like the same things. It's okay. They're like, I don't really love his taste in music. He listens to a lot of sad folk music. I don't want to be sad when I listen to music. I listen to music to not think about how sad I am most of the time.
Right.
But I listen to like Joywave and a lot of like loud, annoying alternative rock music that I'm sure he's just like, what is this noise? What is going on here? But that's just how we're different, and like, I will still go to a concert with him, but because it's something he enjoys doing, I'm not going to pretend like this is the best thing ever. It's entertaining each other, but not like forcing yourself into each other's interests. I actually enjoy playing D&D. He taught me D&D. He's our DM. Like, that's awesome. He is an amazing DM, and I love D&D like so much where like I'm trying to plan like a one-shot campaign. But like,
well, if you're going to do it virtually, let me know. I want in.
Oh my God. It's going to be, no, I can't tell you what the theme is because I have a theme, but like the whole point is to like, you find out what the theme is like once you start. But like, I have got into that because of him, but there are like plenty of things from just like, this isn't my, like, oh, I don't really like, I don't know. There are like some, like, I don't really like playing like a lot of fantasy games. Like, I'm not into like World of Warcraft. I'm not into like Diablo or anything. Like, I don't want to play that. If I'm gonna play it, I just want to role play it. I don't want to like sit at the computer and click and whatever. I don't know, but I'm sure there's plenty of stuff that I do where he's just like, hard pass.
Well, Melissa, my friend, we have run the almost full gamut of your life.
Oh God. Am I about to die? Is this how it ends?
No, this is it. This is your intervention. And
oh God.
Now Now you get to live, walk into the long walk to the west. I'm kidding. Um, but thank you for taking time and talking to me, because I could literally sit here and talk to you for hours, but I want to be respectful of your time and Scott's freedom that he is giving up of precious time with you right now.
Oh, he's at work. You got all day. He's at work right now. He's serving salads to annoying white people in Santa Monica. He's fine.
Nice. All right. Well, to be respectful of your time and the people listening in the future, this is where I'm going to say thank you. You have literally, I kid you not, and you'll hear it when you go back over it, and I hope you listen. The amount of knowledge that you have dropped in this conversation is enough to probably fill like 3 podcasts or 4 podcasts worth of like topics that I would want something to get one out of. So thank you for being an amazing human being. Thank you for being my friend. I love you, and I appreciate your being on the podcast.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be heard, I guess. We'll see. I don't know. Maybe people be like, this is the worst one ever. Maybe this is like the jump the shark episode on episode 2.
No, well, if it is, then it's only downhill from here. All right, mentors, that was Melissa. She was amazing. I hope you found something inspiring, something motivating, something useful, or at least you just enjoyed this amazingly long conversation with a dear and lovely human being. I am going to go listen to some Weird Al. I am going to get ready for episode 3. I look forward to talking to you next week. Thank you, as always, for sticking around. And I can't wait to introduce you to your next unintentional mentor.